And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today we are here with Ruth McGolpin, the volleyball coach over at Westmont College. We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about what your team's doing now and what you've been doing with them to make the best of everything. Why don't you recap that for us?
Yeah, they've been out of school now for about 2 weeks, but prior to that, I was a little bit more hands off with them because the educational part was really difficult for them. And obviously we texted and that sort of thing. Did group meets. We did Zoom meetings every couple of weeks, but they weren't as prevalent as they will be now. We're going to do Zoom meetings every 2 weeks. They started their summer training program with the running and the lifting. And of course that looks different too, because not everybody has access to everything. And then last week, myself and the assistant coach, we did for 3 days straight for about 7 hours every day. We had individual meetings with the girls, and
that's great.
We'll talk about, their goals, what they want to accomplish this summer. And then just talk to them, just to get a handle of, what's going on in their lives. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. I know that the great coaches, that's what they're doing. They take time investing on the athletes, obviously genuinely caring what makes them tick, what works for them mentally, what doesn't work for them. What would be some of the kind of questions that you would ask them to get inside their head a little bit?
Well, I mean, obviously I want to know, what they're doing in general, what does their day look like? Because I want to be concerned that, they're not sleeping until, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and going to bed at, 2 o'clock in the morning. I obviously want them to have as much of a routine as they possibly can. Everybody looks different with what they have at home, but, we were number 2 in the nation last year, and we spent a lot of time on the mindset stuff. So, I continue to empower them, with what their goals are. I mean, I clearly asked them what they wanted to get out of the summer, and what they wanted to get out of next year, and hoping that there is a next year. But, much of what you said, what makes them tick, or some of them are going to have jobs. I mean, everybody's situation is different in every state. So what are they able to do? How are they going to accomplish some of those goals? We talked to a few of them about the possibility of redshirting, but yet, that may or may not happen. We want them to be 100% ready when they step back on the court August 6th. And, whether or not that's, mentally or physically, we want them to be ready. So a lot of those little details for sure.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. How do you guys address bringing their best performance on the day of the competition, right? What works for them versus what doesn't work? Because of course each athlete's different.
Yeah, I mean, last year was my first year as the head coach, and I found that one of the things that as the season progressed, I got more and more engaged with the mind. But at practice, there would be a time when I'd stop practice and I would have them all close their eyes and, look at them seeing themselves doing something well. If they're a passer, seeing themselves passing the perfect ball. If they're a setter, engaging in that, what does that look like to set your attacker and, actually see them getting a kill. And I did that during timeouts a lot too, but the more and more it went on, the more and more that got more and more prevalent. And I think, between that and the team chemistry, I think were the 2 reasons why we were so successful last year. We've had the talent, but we just needed to figure out a way to, break through those little things, the 1% barriers, so it was really impressive because after every timeout, I would have them, close their eyes and I don't know the percentages, but we were very high at siding out. If I was the one to call a timeout, we were very high in siding out because of that.
That's great. That's big. And also being able during that timeout to reset ourselves, whether we did poorly, made a mistake, or even if we did something really well, because then that could be in our head. Well, now we don't want to blow it, or now we feel like we have to get it on the next series. So that's big. What do you tell the athletes to keep themselves like level and even?
Well, I mean, that's hard because even as coaches, we're emotional beasts, certainly.
Right.
I think just the reset, like you said, I try to take the emotion out of it and make it a physical act. So, if I am the passer, I want to see myself actually breaking down that skill in that moment. If I'm an attacker, I want to see maybe, what I'm doing on my transition to break that skill down. So it takes the emotion out of it and it goes strictly to the physical side of things, which, it changes their brain,
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because a lot of people think when we work with mindset with the athletes, we're trying to get them to think more. It's the opposite. We want them to think less.
Yeah.
Less going on up here.
And be a lot more relaxed, for sure. Yeah.
Right. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you might see high schoolers make coming into college that maybe mentally they weren't prepared for, they didn't plan for?
Well, I do think that they're never prepared for how tough it is going from a high school player to a college player. No matter how much you train your body physically, it's always a lot more demanding when you step foot into the gym, because now you have all the people that were the best,
Right.
on your teams in high school. And everybody on that team is, there's a lot more competitors in the gym. There might be 4 people deep, in your position. And now you've got to not only navigate the skill aspect of it, but, the mental and emotional aspect. And then you have to add on top of it, you're living away from home. You're eating dorm food, you're living in a weird bed, you're living with somebody you're not comfortable with. You got, a lot more homework, you're on the road a lot. I mean, there's just so many other things that you don't really think about that go into being a college athlete. But it's by far some of my best times being a college athlete, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I love coaching. So.
Absolutely. So what would a high school kid who wanted to go to Westmont, what would be some tips you would give them to maybe, I know they never know exactly what it is until they get there, but what would be some tips you'd give them to prepare them mentally and physically?
Well, let's start on the physical side. I mean, you can, practice till you're blue in the face, but certainly you have to be talented, to obviously step foot into a gym like ours. All that aside, I do think a lot of reading is important. I mean, even listening to podcasts and, and little tips on you guys, I get those texts that you send, every morning, and I've been blasting them out to the team because I just want them to think, a moment of thought. So I think the more reading they can do and the learning about, how to be even a good leader or a good teammate, I think is essential. And, things that I've actually kind of enjoyed the quarantine a little bit, because I feel like it's given me more of an opportunity to grow, because I've done a lot of webinars and, I have really loved it, because it's given me some time just to be in the moment, and enjoy that. And I've passed those things on to the girls too. And I think the more that they can realize that we're never going to be the best we can be, we just have to continue to strive day in and day out, is something that we're trying to, preach to them every day.
That's great. And that's absolutely something I've been seeing with these higher level coaches that are at the next level and getting to the next level, that they've all said basically the same thing, that during this quarantine, it's been a great thing. Well, why has it been a great thing? Because they have a great attitude in the way they approach it. They see opportunity. They see different ways they can improve that maybe they couldn't have in the past to the same extent. So that's tremendous.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what are some of the things the athletes are doing to physically prepare, mentally prepare? I know you touched on some of that, but what would you say that they should be doing? Any drills they should be doing on their own? How should they be approaching their strength training, conditioning?
Well, I mean, we have a running segment for sure, and it obviously it boils down if they can even get on a track. But that it starts off with, the warm-ups and that sort of things. And then, it's different lengths on the track that they're running, for the cardiovascular portion. And then, our strength training it's going to look different because not everybody has access to the weights,
Right.
you know, so they're going to have to use their own body, you know, and design things, you know, to whatever can suit them. I've even told, you know, if you don't have 10-pound weights, go buy a bag of potatoes, you know, and, you know, start lifting that, you know, and, you know, come up with creative ways. I mean, you know, buy a couple buckets and some cement and, you know, make some cement buckets, you know, for your squats. I mean, there's just so many things that they can do. You know, obviously I've told the passers, the more you can, you know, get on a wall. I mean, just the simple things like go to an elementary school and pass at a handball wall. You know, the setters, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things that they can do. They can go to a basketball hoop and, you know, practice setting inside of the hoop. Because if they can nail that, we play a fun game. I'm a setter, so, you know, I always want to beat them. So that's something that they can work on, you know, is trying to get the ball inside the hoop. You know, the attackers, they can work on, you know, going to that handball wall, and they can work on their approach and their jump swing. They can put a ball in a sock and, you know, work on their wrist snap. I got a video of one of the girls yesterday. She was working on her blocking in her yard on a wall, you know, and it was cute. You know, her head would bob up and down and as she was blocking. You know, I told her in the one-on-ones, I said, you know, one of your goals is you need to be really good at, you know, your defense, you know, on a tip. And so last week she was practicing with her mom by their pool, you know, just, you know, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things that they can do if they're willing to do it. And I think we have a team that's really willing to do it. You know, they're willing to put in the effort, you know, so that's great.
That's great. Yeah, the people usually get that success. They're hungry learners. They're ferocious. They're hustlers. They're go-getters. They find a way. So we say asking good questions is very important. Instead of asking, well, why am I in the situation? Or what's the problem? Instead asking, how can I improve? How can I get better? What's available to me? I would think another thing with volleyball that would be really big is plyometrics, explosive power training. So they're able to really explode probably depth jumps and different types of exercises like that.
And some of them have access to the boxes, you know, they've either had them or they bought them, or they've made them, you know. So again, ingenuity, you know, I mean, a lot of people using those volley boards, you know, just to work on peppering. You know, I got my husband this next weekend, he and my daughter is not a volleyball player, but they're going to build me one of those volley boards. So not for me necessarily. It's for when we get back into the gym, I can have the girls, you know, do some of the work on their own. I went and purchased on my own, as a donation to the program, one of those AirCat machines that, you know, if we can get access to the gym, they can be in there by themselves, you know, and work on serve receive, you know, the ball shoots out, they can pass it, you know, and works on a remote. You know, so, you know, I'm trying to come up with ideas that, you know, because they're hungry to get in the gym. There is no doubt. And again, you know, it reminds me because, you know, when I was a kid, it wasn't all this club volleyball. You know, we had to come up with ways to, you know, keep busy. And I've even shared with recruits, like, you know, when I was a kid, I used to, you know, I used to throw the ball on top of the roof of the house and then pass set and then, you know, set it on top of the roof and then just keep playing over and over because the ball would have different ways of rolling off the roof. And, you know, I had to work on my setter feet and, you know, my hand position. So again, I've tried to continue to encourage them to do these little simple things. And I hope, I know for a fact that they're doing it because I'm getting the videos on it. So.
Yeah. No, and that's another thing. A lot of these athletes are learning how to train, if you want to call it old school, like things the coaches used to do before there was all these opportunities available. So it gives the kids a chance to improve in these different ways. And a lot of times we have the misconception that, oh, our athletes now, well, they prepare the best or they have to be the most advanced because they're the youngest. That's not always the case. We've seen a lot of great athletes in the past doing a lot of practice on their own, finding creative ways to get it done when all these resources weren't at their fingertips.
Right. Yeah. You look at the Michael Jordans of the world, you know, I mean, it's pretty crazy how many hours they spend just shooting baskets, you know, and, you know, we can do the same thing, but, you know, it just looks a lot different. You know, one-on-one volleyball is a little bit different than one-on-one basketball for sure, but we still make it happen.
Yeah. And just different skills. Like you said, you might not be able to work on every single skill right now. That's understandable. But there are some skills you can get really good at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you put the focus.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Oh, that's great. So any sign of when things are going to get going up by you?
mean,
You're on the West Coast now.
Yeah, state of California is a bit rough.
Same thing with New York over here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're business as usual. We continue pouring that into the student athletes is, keep going about your business until they tell us otherwise. School starts normal time, preseason training camp starts August 6th. The schedule will stay the same. I mean, we've told them, we may not have any fans in the stands, or, we may have limited fans in the stands. And I've told them that there's a chance that we might have, no preseason, but, who knows what it's going to look like. So, what we can only control, we can control. And every day is a learning experience. So for sure.
Absolutely. That's what we always say, that you focus, like every coach, you focus on what you can control, you forget about what you can't. And that's why we break it into that difference between the predator and the prey mindset. The predator animals, eyes on the front, they're focused on what's in front of them. Prey, eyes on the side, like to hide, they focus on everything else. So that's what it is. No, it's really great stuff. Any other tips or any other team philosophies? I know you hit on a lot of them already, but anything else that to share with people?
I mean, I think that, prayer is very important. I think, we have to, definitely utilize that to improve ourselves for sure. I think that the more people can grow and just be people, I'm tired of all this political nonsense.
Right.
I just feel like, and that's part of who I am. I'm a very relational person. So I think if people can take this time to develop stronger relationships with one another, whether or not it's, over a phone call or, over a Zoom, or even just talking to your neighbors, 6 feet away, I think there's all sorts of people that need our help, and one person at a time, we can do this together, but we've got to believe, in what we need to do as just a person, a person of God, and just people in general.
That's right. Being outside of ourselves, not just turned in on ourselves. Or what about me? And you're saying it right there, using sports as that vehicle to build virtue. And how do we carry these lessons on to our schoolwork, to our career in the future, to life, to our faith, our spirituality, that we're not letting a day go by without improving like that 1%. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great stuff. I'm sure we could talk about this all day. Thank you very much, Ruth. I really appreciate it. I'm going to give a big shout out to Westmont College. They're doing things right over there. Make sure you check them out.
Thank you very much. You're doing a great job too. I love your stuff.
Thank you very much. Okay, take care.
You too.